Dear Mr. Ganser, we're very pleased to be able to do this interview. Could you briefly introduce yourself and explain how you first became dissatisfied with the official story of 9/11?
Yeah, thank you very much for doing this Skype interview with me. My name is Daniele Ganser. I am a historian. I'm a Swiss citizen. I'm based in Basel in Switzerland. I am 44 years old. I have two kids, and I'm writing books and I'm doing public talks on international politics. So I have a little institute which is called Swiss Institute for Peace and Energy Research. We're working on this vision 100% renewable energies, and we're working on this vision a world with no terror and no war. This is the vision. Obviously, we're not there yet.
Obviously.
But there's a lot of people who like this vision, and we link up with these people. So
Yes.
that's an introduction for my person. Now, as to 9/11, the issue is that I, as a historian, wrote my PhD on NATO's secret armies. And I finished my PhD in September 2001 at Basel University. And part of my PhD was looking at how you can manipulate the population with terrorism, false flag terrorism, strategy of tension. And I looked at data from the Cold War. And I remember that when I was doing my PhD, many people said, this is boring, terrorism is an old-fashioned topic, nobody's interested in that. And so that was the late 90s, 1999, the year 2000. And I said, no, I think it's very interesting and I want to look at that. So that was NATO's secret armies and Operation Gladio.
Yes.
And then in 2001, in September, when I defended my PhD thesis, the terrorist attacks in New York and in Washington happened. And actually from the beginning, I was looking very carefully at the different narratives that are being presented. And dissatisfied, I think I became when I heard about World Trade Center 7. This is really what I think is very, very dissatisfying.
Yes, obviously. What are the most compelling facts, would you say, that should convince anyone that something is wrong with the official story that is presented to us?
I think if people look at the last 15 years, they will see that wars have again and again and again been started with the argument of terror. Okay, the war in Afghanistan started in 2001, and the reason given by America or given also by other NATO countries, including the Dutch government or the German government or the French government, to their own population has always been, we have to fight the terrorists. Okay, so it has become the standard procedure that you start a war and you say we're fighting terrorists, and this is something which is very, very dangerous because under international law, it is not allowed for one country to attack another country. So it would have been completely illegal for Afghanistan to attack the United States in 2001, or it would have been completely illegal for Libya to bomb France in 2011, or for Syria to bomb Germany in 2015. But here in Europe, we tend to think of, oh yeah, the world is full of terrorists. Some of us think so, and we have to bomb them. And this has now been going on for 15 years, and I think people start to realize that this so-called war on terrorism is based on lies. It's full of lies. I think the most obvious lie is the weapons of mass destruction lie, the ABC lie, the Iraq War 2003. This war was started by President Bush and by Prime Minister Tony Blair.
Mm-hmm.
So the British and the Americans attacked Iraq, and the American population and also the American soldiers who fought this war, they thought Saddam Hussein, the president of Iraq, the dictator of Iraq, had something to do with 9/11, but that was a lie. And we know that today as historians as a fact. So I think the most compelling issue here really is not to look at 9/11 alone, but to look at the war on terrorism, which is our time period. We live in the war on terrorism. It's today, it's tomorrow, it was yesterday. It will go on for quite some time. And if you understand that the Iraq war was based on lies, then you start to distrust official narratives from governments like, the US president or the British Minister. And I think the second step is once you've gone through the Iraq evidence, and I think every student should do that himself. He should look at, what was happening in 2003. There were peace demonstrations, and why did they lie, and what was going on. Once he's realized that there's so many lies in this war on terrorism, the second step he should really take is to look at 9/11, because that's the day when the whole war on terrorism started. So really, you always have to go back to the first day when a whole history period starts. And there it is very dangerous that you get lost. Okay, there's many different web pages on 9/11. There's many different books, and there's many different opinions.
Yes.
Okay, so I usually suggest to students or to people who are interested in international history to first of all look at the official narrative. So Bush has said the 9/11 attacks were carried out by a terrorist group called Al-Qaeda, 19 terrorists, and responsible was Osama bin Laden. That is the official story. And he said 2 planes hit the Twin Towers, and the Twin Towers in New York thereafter collapsed due to these 2 planes. So that's the official story. And then many people in Switzerland and also in Holland and in Germany and in Austria, they thought, okay, so the reason for the towers to collapse was because of the planes. That's something that still many people believe today. But when you go deeper into the data, you realize that there's this third tower, which is called World Trade Center 7, which was not hit by a plane, but which also collapsed on the very same day at 5:20. And then you have to use logic. And logic tells you that if the reason for the collapse of World Trade Center 1 and World Trade Center 2, these are the so-called Twin Towers, is given as the reason that Bush said was the airplanes that crashed into the tower. So that's why the towers came down. Then the question comes, why did World Trade Center 7 collapse? Because there was no plane that hit it. So, once you realize that it's 3 towers and 2 planes, it's 3 towers, but 2 airplanes, it doesn't add up with the logic. So there has to be a different reason for the collapse of World Trade Center 7. And that's what I urge everybody who works on the topic of 9/11, focus on World Trade Center 7. There's many different interesting questions. Yes. But I think World Trade Center 7 is the smoking gun. It's the most important question, because when it comes to World Trade Center 7, you only have 2 options. It's very clear and undisputed that this building collapsed. So there's nobody in the whole world who would say, no, there was no World Trade Center 7. Yes, it did collapse, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
And then there's 2 possibilities. One is controlled demolition, so that you use explosives, nanothermite, other possible explosions to bring it down, or that it was destroyed by fires. And this is something where I think every student who's very new to 9/11 or to the whole war on terrorism debate, he should go straight to to World Trade Center 7 and ask the question, fire or controlled demolition? And I think he should ask in his own environment the 3 people that he thinks are the most clever people. If they don't know anything about World Trade Center 7, then they're not the most clever people. Then he has to search for 3 other clever people. Yes. And he should ask them, what do you think? World Trade Center 7, fire or controlled demolition? Because I think that really is the debate today. And I personally don't say it's that one or it's that one. But I help people to come to the point where they ask this question.
Exactly.
And I think it's the scientific integrity of every human being, the logic and the moral of every human being who is strong enough to make a decision on that point.
Okay, yes. Thank you. Yes, people I've showed it to just said, can't be. Can't be.
Yeah.
Mostly they didn't know there was this third building.
Yes, most people don't know. That's the normal thing. No. Most people don't know much about the war on terror. They just have a feeling of, I'm scared and let's kill the Muslims. But that is the very first step. And I think as a second step, you have to remind yourself that all life is sacred. You know, no human being should kill any other human being.
No.
So this idea of let's bomb the Muslim is just barbaric. Okay, we can't do it.
Yeah.
It would be wrong if the Muslims would bomb us. It's wrong if we Christians bomb the Muslims. So there's a lot of people in the peace movement among the Christians and also among the Muslims who say let's not drift into violence. And it's only the most radical Muslims and only the most radical Christians and only the most radical Jews who say let's kill the other group. Okay, they're so fanatic that they say we have to exterminate everybody else who believes something else.
Yes.
And so I think those people who are more advanced in this whole field of research, they then understand that World Trade Center 7 fell. In fact, I gave a TED talk in Hungary in 2016, not long ago.
I saw it.
But you saw it, okay? It's on the internet, and the people in the room were people who are, I think, curious. You know, people who go to TED talks, they pay an entrance fee and they listen the whole day to questions that are of current interest. And it was only like 20% in the room, or maybe a little bit more, who knew that World Trade Center 7 had fallen. So still today, I think, I don't know how it is in Holland. Here in Switzerland, not everybody knows that it was 3 towers that fell, but people who are very well informed about war and terror and security and peace issues, they know. And I've asked 2 professors at ETH, that is a university here in Zurich, and they told me it's probably controlled demolition. That was Jörg Schneider and Hugo Bachmann.
Yeah, we had in Holland, we had the Danny Joenko, who was an expert, and he declared the same thing.
Is that this interview where he says, zeker weten?
Exactly, that's the interview. Yeah.
Is he dead now?
He is dead, yes. He had a sort of strange accident with his Volvo alone. He probably hit a tree or something.
And what is his family thinking? Is this...
I don't know. They don't seek media attention.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this video was within people who research 9/11. This video of him saying this was certainly. What does zeker weten mean?
Knowing for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
This video went viral. I mean, you know, people are connected today. There are peace researchers in the United States. There are peace researchers in Holland. There are peace researchers in Germany and in Switzerland. And we all don't want the war on terror. We just don't want it. We think it's not a good idea. Let's not kill each other.
Exactly.
And try to find out the truth. And I think there's thousands and thousands. There's even people in Japan. You know, in Japan there was a parliamentarian in the Japanese parliament, and he showed the collapse of World Trade Center 7 in the Japanese parliament. It was not reported here in Switzerland. It was not reported in Germany or in Holland. But you have to be aware that this debate is ongoing and more people ask questions, and rightly so.
Yes. There's another question I would like to put forward, and that's why is it so that there seems so little interest among historians for this issue? I mean, we have architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. We don't have historians for 9/11 Truth.
Sadly, yeah, sadly.
What's happening there?
You know, historians, they can always decide what period of history they want to research. So many have settled for the Second World War, or for the Middle Ages, or for the Roman period, or for the Greek period. So really, these historians, I have to say, have to be excused, because they don't cover contemporary history. They would never comment on contemporary history. If, for instance, you're a professor for medieval history, then you usually only comment on medieval history. I don't think that is a very good situation. I think we should have much more historians and also political scientists who cover international history from 1945 until today. They comment on the Vietnam War, they comment on the Kuwait War, they comment obviously on all sorts of questions. And there are some, but unfortunately very, very few. I am a historian, so I take the responsibility for my colleagues to say there are some who question 9/11, but many historians, unfortunately, don't raise their voice, or some have even said Bush has told the truth, which I thought was very surprising. I mean, you know, it's one thing to just shut up And it's another thing to actually support the story that Bush presented. I think that the best thing that historians really can do is to help people through this huge data overkill that we have. You know, there's not too little data, there's too much data. And historians should help to structure the different narratives. And when I published my first newspaper article here in Switzerland, it was in German, in the Tagesanzeiger in 2006. So, you know, the first 5 years after 9/11, I just shut up. That's what historians usually do. We wait, and then we wait, and then we wait another year. That's how we are. And now we just gather facts.
Exactly.
In 2006, I thought it was about time that in Switzerland we have a debate about World Trade Center 7. That's now 10 years ago, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm 44 now. I was 34 then, yeah. And then I wrote this article, and I said there's basically three narratives on 9/11. And still today, I think there are three narratives. The first narrative is the so-called surprise narrative. And it means it's the story of Bush. It's also a conspiracy theory. It's the official conspiracy theory. And it basically says that 19 Muslims armed with box-cutting knives hijacked 4 airplanes and crashed them into the Twin Towers, and one into the Pentagon and one into Shanksville. And so, you know, the government of George Bush and Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld was completely surprised. They knew that something was coming, that's for sure, we know that. But they didn't know where and when, so they, you know, it was Osama bin Laden. Official story, it's the surprise story. And, you know, there's millions of people on the globe who believe that story. And then there's the second story, and it's called Lihop, Let It Happen on Purpose.
Yeah.
And this story says, yes, the terrorist attack on that day was carried out by Muslims. Radical Muslims wanted to attack the United States. They hate the United States because of their policy in the Middle East, for their support of Israel, for the different countries they have bombed. So, you know, they wanted to attack the United States. Real Muslim criminals. But people in the US government of George Bush, and also in the Secret Service, in the CIA and other parts of the Pentagon, knew that the attack was coming and let it happen deliberately. So this is the let it happen on purpose. It's like if you know somebody's crash is going to crash into your car, and your car is very old, and you quite like that somebody crashes into it, because then you can ask your insurance company for a new car.
Yes.
It's a little bit like that, but obviously on a much more drastic level. And then you have two criminals. Then you have the Bush administration is saying criminal, and the Muslims are criminal. And the third theory, or the third narrative, as you might want to call it, is the so-called make it happen on purpose or inside job story. In that case, Osama bin Laden has nothing to do with the terrorist attacks, and it's criminal elements in the United States, so from the Secret Services and also from the defense sector, who carried out the terrorist attack, and then in the sense of a false flag terrorist attack, blamed it on the Muslims. And I really say, you will find books for each of the three stories. You will find web pages for each of the three stories. And in the end, it will have to be, you have to make up your own mind. It's not, your teacher cannot tell you, your father cannot tell you, and in fact, you have to find out yourself.
That's right. Perhaps could you tell something about the Northwood documents? Yes,
I mean, many people have approached me and said, Jesus Christ, how can you even think of, putting these three stories forward, Surprise, Lihop, and Mihop, because Mihop would mean that you actually attack your own population, and that would, be very, very, very ugly. And this is just the normal situations of consciousness that a human being has. Human beings think that a democratic country would never, ever carry out an attack on its own population. It's just not possible in their head. But obviously, I am a historian, so I've looked at a lot of data. And in one case, I looked at the war between the United States and Cuba. And maybe just briefly have to explain this to people who are not familiar with that historic moment. In 1961, the CIA, so that's the Secret Service of the United States, made an invasion of Cuba because they wanted to overthrow the government of Fidel Castro. Now that's illegal, okay? You cannot have an invasion. You cannot have a secret invasion. That's just illegal. You know, when Hitler attacked Poland, that was also illegal. It's just illegal for one country to attack another country. Fidel Castro in April 1961 defeated the CIA, so the invasion didn't work. They wanted to overthrow Fidel Castro. It's in fact something very similar is happening today in Syria. There's many people who try to overthrow the government of Assad in Syria, but that's another story. Yes. Let's go back to Cuba. And when the CIA failed to overthrow Fidel Castro, the Pentagon said, well, you know, let us do the job. Because, you know, the CIA and the Pentagon, they're also rivals. They always say, oh, I can do it better. And the Pentagon generals then wrote a plan, which is called Operation Northwoods. So everybody who has never heard of that plan, I suggest that they search it on the internet. You can find the original document. The plan, written in 1962 and signed by General Lyman Lemnitzer, who is the highest-ranking military officer in the Pentagon. He's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, so the biggest general in the Pentagon. He signed it, and he suggested we could blow up a ship in Guantanamo and blame Cuba. And this is an incredible suggestion because it actually means that you carry out terrorism against your own ship and then blame your opponent. Okay, so that's again what we call in historical research false flag. It's like you have a house and you put fire to your own house and then you blame your neighbor. And then the police comes and searches the house of the neighbor and they find a lighter in his house and they find a little bit of cloth, let's say a red cloth, and this red cloth they also find it in your house which is burning. So the police says, okay, he did it.
Yeah.
And then they arrest the man in the other house and nobody, you know, if it's well done, nobody finds out that in fact you put fire to your own house and just blame somebody else. So this is what the Pentagon suggested. The Pentagon is the U.S. Defense Ministry, and it's very, very dangerous. Okay, yes. It has attacked many, many countries, bombed many countries, actually more countries than anybody else. And the Pentagon has just suggested to blow up an American ship in Guantanamo, which is obviously a military base of the United States in Cuba. And another idea which the Operation Northwoods suggested was to carry out terrorist bombings in Miami and in Washington. So real terrorist attacks, which would then be blamed on Fidel Castro, just to shock the population. Mm. And that is something that was secret for many, many years. It was only after 40 years. So think, you know, the plan was made in 62, and 40 years later, around the year 2000, the plan was revealed. So for a long period of time, people were completely ignorant of that. And it is important to say that President Kennedy, who was at the time the president in the White House, he said to his own general, Lyman Lemnitzer, that the plan is crazy, that he's not going to do it. He doesn't want it. And Kennedy also said that he wants to stop the war in Vietnam. The war in Vietnam actually started in 1964 with the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which was also a war lie. You know, there was never an attack on the American ship. Right. But before, already in 63, there were American advisors, as you call them, in Vietnam. And Kennedy stopped Operation Northwoods, and he wanted to stop the Vietnam War, and then he was shot in Dallas in 1963. So the killing of Kennedy is one other of these big political murder, which, you know, you have many books and many questions of how it all happened. And I just want to maybe conclude with helping people to understand Operation Northwoods. It also suggested that they could use planes. Okay, remember that in 9/11, yes, there were planes used, and in Operation Northwoods, the Pentagon, so that's the U.S. Defense Ministry, actually should be called the U.S. Offense Ministry because not much defense about it, that they said, we're going to take a plane and we're just going to put CIA people in it, and we will, you know, change their names, and we will say these are students who are going to Peru to help the poor people in Peru. And then we have this plane take off, and in midair we're going to have a rendezvous with another plane, which is a drone, an empty plane that is remote controlled. That was, already thinkable in the 60s. And we will have the plane with the CIA agents on board. We have this land somewhere in a small airport, nobody would notice, in the US. And the other plane would continue. So actually in midair, you switch the planes and nobody will notice, because if
The radar won't notice.
nobody lives in midair.
Right.
So you don't notice. It's very hard to notice when a plane switches in midair.
Yes.
And the Pentagon generals then suggested that this drone would fly over Cuba, and they would have a bomb inside the plane, which they would then remote control start. So the plane would blow up above Cuba, and America would then say, "Oh, Fidel Castro shot down the plane with all these students." It's important to remember that people were really thinking this.
Yeah,
exactly. It's not some sort of conspiracy theory, because people always go like, "Oh, that's just a conspiracy theory," and by that they mean this is just stupid. It's not possible. Nobody would think of that.
Yes.
And as a historian, I've obviously looked at many secret operations, and secret operations are always conspiracies. Okay, the CIA they didn't call Fidel Castro before they made the Bay of Pigs invasion. I mean, you have to keep it secret.
Yes.
So that's Operation Northwest.
Thanks. Well, one last question, or actually perhaps two, but I will ask them in one go. That is, in 2015, you've spoken in Dornach during the International Teachers Conference of Waldorf's teachers.
Yeah.
Now, well, this interview will also be presented at a Waldorf school. So the question would really be, how could teachers approach these themes we have been discussing when working with young people? Should it be addressed during history lessons, for instance? What's your take on that?
Absolutely. It must be addressed. I mean, we're now living in the so-called information revolution. And basically the information revolution is the digital age. That's a historical novelty. In fact, that's maybe a funny story at the side. I was a student in 1996 in Amsterdam. We had the opportunity as Swiss historians during our studies to study at a different university. And, I could actually look at different universities in France, in Great Britain, in Germany, and in Holland. And my dream really was to study, to spend a year in Amsterdam, because I think the Netherlands is just a very cool place.
Yes.
And so I spent a year there in Amsterdam, and it was during that time, and I very well remember 1996, when some other students said, "Hey, Daniele, don't you want to come and check out We Go on the internet?" And I said, "The internet, what's that?" And they said, "Yeah, there's a whole row of computers here, and we can all sit there, and it's for free. And I don't know what we'll do. We just maybe surf, but we don't know what we will do. We just see pictures or send emails, or we don't know." It was all new in 1996. That's 20 years ago.
Yeah.
and we went there, and it was a time when when you would have an internet site going like. Zzz, zzz, I mean, you're the same age or similar age like me, so we know how the internet used to be many years ago. And today we can do this Skype interview. And what it all means is that during the last 20 years, we've had an incredible information revolution. And it means that the students in the different schools, in the Waldorf schools, in other schools, they are all on the internet. Let's not, fool ourselves. Yeah. They are interested in what's happening around them. Of course, they are interested in football or in clothes or how to look beautiful or where to go on a holiday, all these questions. But not only, they're also interested, and I really see this from the lectures that I gave. I've done a lot of lectures that were filmed and put on the internet, and people sent me emails. And I always say, don't send me emails, I'm getting too many emails. But really, I do see that the group between 15 years old and 25 years old is very, very interested in global politics and the world. Will there be more wars? Will there be more peace? What's actually going on? And why do we bomb Syria? And are the Russians evil? And what's happening in Ukraine? And why did they kill Gaddafi? And what's NATO doing? Is it aggressive or is it defense? Or why does the CIA use torture? Is the CIA a terrorist organization? Or why did Obama get the Nobel Peace Prize? Or who is the Al-Nusra Front? And what's Al-Qaeda? So all these questions, they are there.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important that as a teacher, you address these questions and that you give them the opportunity to speak about the question of terrorism, about 9/11, about the Iraq War, about NATO, about war crimes. And I'm convinced. I mean, I did teach students at Zurich University at the history department. And what I did is I said, well, you know, we have these three stories about 9/11, Surprise, Lee Hope, and Me Hope. Mm-hmm. And now we have different sets of data, different books, and I want every group to, you know, work through one topic, and then, you know, they can give their analysis. And it was actually funny to see, because one group said, oh, we're convinced it was Me Hope. You know, it was an inside job, very clear. And then the other group said, who worked on a different set of data, said, oh no, we're surprised. We're absolutely sure it was Surprise. And the third group said, no, the truth is in between. It's Lee Hope. You know, they knew it was coming and they let it happen. And what I allowed them was actually to have a debate. Okay, to have a debate. And the funny thing was that they wanted me in the end to tell them who's right. Okay?
Of course.
They didn't care. They said, you know, Cheney is a criminal or Osama bin Laden is a criminal. I don't care. I want to know who is the really bad guy, and then this guy should be hanged or shot or what. And I didn't do that. You know, we met 12 times, so or 14 times. That's how long a semester is. It's 2 hours a week. And in the end, I just said to them, you know, the important thing is that you question. When you're able to question, and even if you, in the end, don't know what really happened, you know, that's possible, you will not easily say, let's start a war, okay? Because if you say, this act of terrorism is unclear, then you will not give away your rights as a citizen and say, let's build a surveillance state. You know, let's give more money to the secret services. If you're not sure what the secret services were involved in the terrorist attack, so you're not going to do it. No. And you're not going to say, oh, let's bomb Afghanistan or Iraq or Libya or what have you, if you're not sure what happened. So you will be cautious. And you will understand that there are many different perspectives for every historical event. Yes. I think if we as teachers, I mean, I teach on a university level, you teach in a school, and basically we all want to bring out the best in the people whom we work with. And so I congratulate you for organizing the conference, because I think it can bring out more awareness. And if these people are then less eager to bomb another country, okay, then that's good. I think that is humanitarian, and that if they're very clear that human life is sacred, you know, if maybe they have brothers and sisters and they think, how would they feel if somebody would kill their brother? They would be shocked. Why? Because human life is sacred. Mm-hmm. How would they feel if somebody comes along and shoots them? They'd be sad, you know, because, you know, they would want to have a life and make experiences. So, and that's the same thing for the people in Afghanistan and Iraq. We have more than 1 million people killed in Iraq. And the whole war was based on lies. Yes. And we have around 200,000 people killed in Afghanistan. And, you know, if you compare the figures, you have 3,000 people killed on 9/11 and 1.2 million killed in Afghanistan and Iraq. So really, I think it's important to think about the war on terrorism, and I really urge everybody at university level or at schools, or also parents at home, to talk with the kids. Yes. And you know, shift. Don't say it's like that. Let them find their way. Yeah.
Mr. Ganser, thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you very much for the interview, and good luck to you, whatever you do. And let's hope that the peace movement will become stronger during the next 10 years.
Absolutely.